Take my hand, stay, Joanne. Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't see you come in there. I was just practicing a couple cowboy calls out on the range. Breyers. For when your parents are too poor for a real horse, but middle class enough to be able to spend $50 on a fake one. Ubiquitous in the horse girl world, Breyers are the upper echelon of horse toys, straddling the line between collectible and plaything. They may have lived in the same carpet herd as your terrifying walking Barbie horse, but they knew they were cut from a different cloth. Even if you haven't given your Breyers much thought over the past 20 years, aside from looking on eBay to see if they're worth anything, there is still a passionate community out there on the interwebs who collect the originals and customize their own. Back in October 2020, a scandal so wicked, so shocking, rocked this sleepy community and had a bunch of European teenagers Googling who the hell Terry Bradshaw was. Today, I'm going to be talking about Intuit. In 1950, Breyer Molding Company, as it was known then, was commissioned by the F.W. Woolworth Company, yes, that Woolies, to make a horse to decorate a Western-themed clock. As the story goes, this horse, now known as the Western Horse, was so popular that the American public demanded that the horse be sold as a standalone item. Breyer released this model to great success, and now you can buy sets including tiny plastic horse poop for $24.99. The truth is a bit more complicated than that. In 1949, Mastercrafters Clock and Radio Company initially held a contract with a different plastics manufacturer, Heartland Plastics, to make a horse figurine and the base for a new clock design. This first model is known as Victor, and a slightly larger variant is known as Large Champ. Both were sold as standalone toys by Heartland directly. The exact details are lost to history, but Mastercrafters and Heartland parted ways, and Breyer was asked to produce these horse figurines instead. And both companies were located in Chicago, so it was potentially a cost-saving measure and not due to a dispute, but we'll likely never know. We also don't know if Breyer was asked to deliberately replicate the same horse design as Heartland, as to not indicate a major change for the consumer, but the horses are incredibly similar. They're very Trigger-esque. Both Breyer and Heartland continued selling plastic models independently, but Breyer really dialed in on the model animal market over the following years and began to cultivate the model horse community we know and love today. After being purchased by Reeves International in 1984, Breyer has continued to find great success in the plastic model horse arena with various lines aimed at different ages and price points. Since 1990, Breyer has hosted a convention at the Kentucky Horse Park known as Breyerfest. Over 3 days, fans can expect to meet celebrity horses and celebrity humans, watch themed performances, compete in live shows with their models, fraternize with their fellow collectors, and most importantly, buy! Each year will follow a different theme. Some are very literal, others are a bit more esoteric. Each year's Breyerfest will offer a handful of convention-only models. Most notable of these is the Celebration model. The Celebration model will be a horse related to the theme and notable in some way, and this model will be exclusive to Breyerfest attendees. The horse itself will also make an appearance at the convention for fans to look at and watch and see it do what horses do. On the 12th of October 2020, the Breyerfest 2021 theme was announced, Horse of a Different Colour. Breyerfest's 2021 celebration of Horse of a Different Colour will highlight the spots, stripes, and chrome we love about the equines in our life. Appaloosas and brindles and pintos. Oh my! We can't wait to introduce you to this year's stunning celebration horse. Oh, if only they knew! 9 days later, on the 21st of October, the 2021 celebration horse was announced. Introducing Intuit. In my script, I just wrote fart noise. Now, even if you are the most casual horse enjoyer, or someone who has a very vague understanding of what a horse is supposed to look like, you probably have some questions as to what is going on with this man. Intuit was born in 2017 and is owned by Terry Bradshaw Quarter Horses. Yes, that Terry Bradshaw. The Bradshaws bought Intuit near the beginning of 2019, and he won the 2-year-old stallion and Grand Champion stallion at the 2019 Appaloosa Horse Club National Show in Texas. He then won the 2-year-old stallion class at the APHC World Show a few months later, making him a national and world champion. The way America will just compete against itself and call it the world is fierce. I love that for them. Intuit seems to have immediately retired from the show circuit after these wins, and he was on the cover of the November-December 2020 Appaloosa Journal and their stallion directory. He was available for stud as of the 2020 breeding season, and as of 2022 he had bred 93 mares for $1,000 a pup. Intuit is shown in the halter class, meaning that he is supposed to be the perfect embodiment of his breed. He doesn't have to run, he doesn't have to jump, he just has to stand there and look good. These horses, to many, are the equivalent of the German Shepherds with frog legs and the pugs with faces so flat that their eyes can pop out if they sneeze. Human beings are going to do one thing, and it's eugenics. For American quarter horses, and by extension Appaloosas, as the registered bloodlines are so interwoven, the gold standard has become an incredibly large and muscular body with straight legs and large jowls. For better or worse, this is the look people are after. This boy was making waves. The reaction to this celebration horse announcement was negative to say the least. The first impression was that Intuit is ugly. Doesn't take a breed confirmation expert to see that this boy ain't right. Seeing the real horse next to the model really emphasizes how absurd he looks and how far removed from any understanding of what a horse is supposed to look like he is. But for model horse people who are slightly more well-versed in the history of the modern halter horse had slightly stronger opinions than just calling him ugly. For the most vocal of the anti-Intuit crowd, their issue with his inclusion as the 2021 celebration horse was that this is a type of horse that shouldn't exist, and an industry that doesn't deserve to be celebrated. Intuit isn't just weird looking, he is a stallion that is being used to create more horses that look like him for money. Appearance aside, a horse's conformation impacts their quality of life. Common sense will tell you that deliberately breeding a very large animal that has tiny feet is not going to work out great for them in the long run. And these muscles aren't made from a diet of white rice and plain chicken and Scooby-Doo antics at the gym. Quarter horses are intended to be stocky and on the chunkier side, but the trend for extreme muscling seemingly began with a horse called Impressive, who was born in 1969 and would go on to win the World Championship stallion at the first AQHA World Championships in 1974. He would go on to sire 2,251 registered AQHA foals, with several becoming world champions in their own right, and as of 2009 he had 355,000 registered descendants. It was then discovered in 1980 that many descendants of Impressive were experiencing sporadic muscle tremors and even paralysis, despite their large and succulent muscles. These attacks can last up to an hour and manifest as muscle twitching in the horse's flank, face, neck, and shoulders, with the horse excessively sweating and becoming distressed because of the pain. Horses have even died due to laryngeal paralysis during these attacks. This genetic mutation would later be identified as hyperkalemic periodic paralysis and is unique to quarter horses. Upon first glance, Breyer fans assumed Intuit had HYPP in some form due to his body looking like that and what type of world champion he was. At the time of the announcement, this information was missing from Intuit's profile, but it was available for other horses that were out to stud. Could this mean a cover-up? When this testing was made available on the TBQH site, it was shown that Intuit does not have HYPP. Woo! Woo! But he does have something called PSSM type 1. Boo! 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 Polysaccharide storage myopathy is a different genetic mutation that also causes pain and weakness in the muscles. My understanding is that PSSM is less severe than HYPP, but that's not to say that it doesn't still cause extreme pain and discomfort in horses. Okay, let's move on to something lighter. Oh no! As is the nature of call-out, or accountability culture, it wasn't long before people went trawling through the archives in the hopes of finding Intuit's metaphorical problematic tweets from 2010 in hopes of adding a bit more fuel to the fire. After doing a quick Google for Terry Bradshaw racist, Breyer fans gained even more reasons not to support Intuit, as this old white guy from Louisiana is no stranger to saying dumb shit. When the horse of a different colour theme was announced, some fans did speculate that this might mean Breyer would finally dip their toe into the dark and sordid world of social justice and maybe make some horses that are, Breyer have remained largely apolitical until they began to acknowledge Pride Month in 2021, potentially because of all this, and then retconned a handful of their rainbow models into being Pride-themed. The horse world, especially the horse world in the southern US, is obviously very right-wing, so to have Breyer collaborate with a guy like this felt like them siding with the enemy from the perspective of the typically left-leaning online model horse community, and just tone-deaf in general given the political climate at the time. Although Terry Bradshaw himself is not the Trump-loving, COVID-denying, vaccines give you autism type, he still got painted with the same broad brushstrokes all the same. So, to recap, we went from having a horse that is ugly to having a horse that is 1. Has a genetic disease and has been bred to fit an unsustainable body type, both of which are known to impact quality of life. 2. Is being bred despite these health implications by a stable that also breeds horses with a different genetic disease that is known to impact quality of life even more. And 3. He's owned by a Republican, and those are the bad guys! Breyer had begun to moderate their comments after the initial outburst and reiterated that any personal attacks would be removed now that the fans were also bringing Terry Bradshaw into this. The posts have since been deleted, but you can still see comments on the posts before and after the Celebration Horse announcement from detractors asking if Breyer was going to acknowledge what was happening. Posts were also made to Facebook groups that judge horse conformation, and Horse Twitter got to see some of the action too. Some of these comments were mean-spirited and petty, but I'd argue that they're just internet-y. Do these communities tend to be filled with people who are maybe a little bit self-righteous? And do people that really like animals tend to have difficulties talking with other people? I wouldn't know anything about that. I would still say that the general sentiment was still that the community didn't want this type of horse to be lionized, and that they were surprised that Breyer hadn't seen this coming. At this point, the conversation wasn't really about Intuit anymore, if it had even been about him in the first place. Then there was the inevitable backlash to the backlash, with a pro-Intuit side forming out of people who weren't part of the model horse community, but who did have halter horses or were conservatives and needed to defend their honour against the online trolls. People blasted the supposed animal lovers for bullying a poor defenseless horse who couldn't help what he looked like. All horses are beautiful. There's this weird stereotype that model horse collectors aren't real horse people, and thus complete idiot scum that don't know their cannon bones from their cantles. Am I right? Waka waka. In the same way that Intuit was a symbol for what's wrong with the modern horse breeding circuit, he was also a symbol for the good old boys and girls and how their way of life is being destroyed by cancel culture. And what's so wrong about saying being gay is a choice anyway? Ignoring some outliers, the sympathy comments are largely innocuous and centre around the fact that the creation of a plastic toy does not impact the health and well-being of actual horses. If you don't like it, don't buy it. It wasn't hard to view the anti-Intuit crowd as a bunch of scolds who are acting holier than thou, because that's just the tone these snark communities tend to operate in. And I understand that point of view. Things really did seem to jump from 0 to 60 really fast, as this was an issue concerning politics and animal rights. Both of those topics are known to bring out the best in people. Other Breyer models have undoubtedly been made of horses with detrimental genetic conditions, quality of life problems due to their conformation, or of horses that have suffered cruelty at the hands of their trainers. Breyer have released models sculpted after Totilas and Vallegro, despite both horses being used as examples of how extreme dressage has become. They've celebrated countless racehorses, and that's the one industry that even the general public think is questionable. To some, it felt like the Western disciplines were being unfairly targeted, and that the English disciplines can be just as harmful, but nobody raises a big stink about that when it's celebrated in plastic. But, in my opinion, when it comes to animal welfare, it's not an all or nothing type issue. If you were to ask the people who were most outspoken against Intuit, they would also have strong feelings about animal welfare in regards to every equine discipline. To my knowledge, celebration horses are not paid for their involvement with Breyer, but the collaboration is undeniably a huge promotion for the stable and for the horse's career. Intuit would have been the first halter horse to be chosen as a celebration horse, so even if Breyer's endorsement of Intuit didn't translate directly into children of the world dreaming of one day owning their very own potato on toothpicks, it still would have created a relationship between Breyer and a controversial aspect of the horse world that maybe they didn't need to begin a relationship with in 2020 after successfully avoiding it for 50 years. As for the politics, Breyer should have known their audience better. As much as I dislike the "your fave is problematic" approach, and how quickly the discourse turned into people just repeating stuff they saw other people say, I can't fault the community for standing up for itself. People didn't want a company that they were passionate about to align itself with someone like Terry Bradshaw, and they let those opinions be known. The polite and well-researched comments were getting deleted just as much as the inflammatory ones. A popular refrain at the time, and one that kept cropping up during my research for this video, was that these so-called animal-loving pinkos had been sending threats to the Bradshaw family and had also been threatening Intuit's well-being. And at the time, I figured it probably did just turn into people sending death threats to each other, because that's what the internet's all about, baby! Obviously, flame wars and calling people animal abusers is not the most productive way to have a conversation, but I couldn't find any threats of violence involved from either side. Small victories. Welp, there's a first time for everything. A whole 2 days after the initial announcement, on October 23rd, 2020, Breyer released a statement that Intuit's owners had decided to retract Intuit as the 2021 celebration horse. The model would not go into production, and Intuit would not make an appearance at BreyerFest. Breyer then deleted every post they had made relating to Intuit, and everyone was left to think about what they'd done. Was this time for some serious introspection as to how we communicate with people that we might disagree with online? No, obviously not. Now everyone's mad. The pro-Intuit side was dismayed that Breyer had given in to the cyberbullies. For the anti-Intuits, it was disingenuous for Breyer to not acknowledge why people had got so upset in the first place, as their statement didn't really acknowledge anything at all. The closest they get is by saying, where we have difference, there can be meaningful dialogue and discussion in a respectful manner. But there's no mention of what these differences that we should be civil about are. For the Bradshaws, they focus on Intuit and that he did not ask for this attention. Terry Bradshaw talked briefly about the situation on Facebook in November, again reiterating that the negative comments were coming from people who didn't know about horses and were stupid.
If they're stupid people, they really are stupid people. I mean, stupid people.
There is no doubt in my mind that everyone at TBQH loves their horses. People who show and breed halter horses are dedicating their entire lives to caring for these animals. So, in my opinion, it's not constructive to call these people animal abusers. The unfortunate reality of the horse world is that animal welfare is just not a priority, from breeding practices to training methods to day-to-day care. From the little kids at riding schools to professional riders on Grand Prix horses worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Most of us are still a long way away from being able to understand that we can love something but still cause it harm, no matter how unintentionally. For a lot of horse people, that means unlearning everything you've been taught, because the abuse is so systemic and pervasive, no matter the industry. It's overwhelming, and I don't blame people for not being able to face that. Boo! Nuance! Boo! Boo! The one thing we can celebrate is the fact that this was not picked up by Fox News in any capacity. Thank God! It has everything you need for a great cancel culture piece, and it actually happened, instead of half the crap that they try and stir their audience into getting riled up about. I could see us getting videos of people just blasting stablemates with AKs. Around 3 months later, in January 2021, Dinash's Northern Tempest was announced as the new 2021 celebration horse. I agree that she is a much better representation of the theme, and this model is gorgeous. BreyerFest 2021 came and went, with Dani performing her celebration horse duties amicably. She also made an appearance in person, or in Horsen, at BreyerFest 2022, and appears to be doing her best out in Florida. As well as anyone can. Poor old Intuit faded back into obscurity. He makes the occasional appearance on the TBQH social media pages, and you can still buy his for $1,000, so being a victim of cancel culture doesn't seem to be all that bad. After putting their PhD in horse genetics back on the shelf, the Breyer community went back to its normal level of infighting and vague booking. This level of chaos is really not the norm there. On Instagram, at least. What happens on Facebook is none of my business. It was pretty tricky to go back and dig up everything that happened because Breyer have since deleted all of the posts. And then people deleted their own posts in the cold light of morning. There's only one archive of this event in the form of a Reddit thread from 2021, and even there you can see the two groups forming of people who think this whole thing is silly, or actually it was the most noble and righteous cause ever and everyone was totally justified in their behaviour. Anyway, I hope this serves as a decent play-by-play as to what happened and why people acted the way that they did. Was it justified? Did we learn anything from it? I don't know, man. Make your own opinions. I'm just a vessel for information, okay? I'm just channeling this right off the dome. I don't even write anything down. Thanks for watching. I didn't have a cowboy hat, but I did have a Christian girl autumn hat and some tape, so I think I did a pretty good job. Good that. It's pretty good. It's pretty good stuff.